Finally, guys, wanted to come to a story that hit late yesterday. I think Reuters broke it, but Dan Loeb, Third Point, of course, urging Intel to explore strategic alternatives. It was a letter that was sent, I'm told, 20 minutes prior to that. They had a phone call letting them know it was coming. Of course, Intel has been under fire for any number of reasons, including vast underperformance versus some of its peers, its miss of a cycle in terms of manufacturing, a lead being taken to some extent in terms of the ability to produce smaller chips by the likes of Taiwan Semi and Samsung and others. There you see it. It did have a nice pop yesterday. You can see it there on the story. I do have a bit more to add here, of course. Listen, one of the key things is the fact that the nominating window here is January 15th. It closes. And so one would anticipate that Third Point, which has a position of roughly $1 billion, let's call it, all in-house, by the way. There's no sidecar, as we say, where they raise money from other investors, perhaps their existing LPs and the like. It is right now in swap, but they filed Hart-Scott. They can put it in their name pretty quickly. Yeah, you say, well, as a percentage, still not that big. But, of course, Third Point has a great deal of influence. And one would imagine there are a lot of long-only shareholders who share in some of the frustration that is out there in terms of what Intel has failed to accomplish over these last couple of years, as it is, well, it's lost the lead, hasn't it? I mean, take a look at the loss of market share to AMD and the performance of that stock versus AMD, for example. That is simply one example of sort of the frustration we're talking about. In its letter, though, Third Point did not go after specifically Bob Swan, of course, the company's CEO, who joined us not long ago for an interview, sort of talked more just broadly about the loss of talent at the company and how they can try to start to rebuild that need for talent at Intel. Interesting to note, of course, Mike, that this is a company that trades at close to like 10, 11 times earnings, far below the group, far below, of course, the likes of some of its key competitors as well. And so if you're Loeb, you know, I look at the track record there of Third Point. They went into Sony, which has done extraordinarily well, even though Sony did not actually follow much of any of its advice. But it was the right stock, maybe not necessarily the battle won, but they did great. Disney, well, they sent that letter in, and then Disney did a lot of different things. That has performed extraordinarily well. So oftentimes, it's much more about the stock selection than the battle. But in this one, it may be about both, because they do feel there's little downside given how undervalued Intel is. And if you could get the multiple up to even, let's say, 15 times, you would obviously see a significant increase in the stock price. And there is frustration, as I said, amongst long-onlys. And so one would imagine when they go to ISS, for example, how do you prove your case if you're Intel? That'll be interesting for them to do. They've also brought on Evercore as an advisor. We'll see what they can do in terms of that. And then this larger question of, well, can you do something with manufacturing that really adds value? Can you sell some assets potentially as well that adds value? Unclear. Is it a national champion? You know, I actually asked Bob Swan a few weeks ago when we had him on, Morgan, about this idea of national security being embedded in the overall play that Intel is in terms of semiconductors, given it is by far the largest U.S. manufacturer. Here's what he had to say.
We power 95% of the digital infrastructure today. And we have a large U.S. industrial base, and we play a very important role in national security and a safe and secure supply chain for the manufacturing and development of chips. In whatever decision we make, we will continue to have high volume manufacturing and invest in technology development here in this country.
Well, yeah. Mr. Swan under a lot of pressure already in terms of that decision, Morgan, and now, of course, a lot more pressure coming in the form of Mr. Loeb and Third Point.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.